Hi, you're about to hear the very first live Pondercast. It was recorded in front of a live audience in Fredericton, New Brunswick on January 19th of 2018, and it was part of Shivering Songs Festival. On stage at the Fredericton Public Library, there was me, Joshua Van Tassel, and special musical guest Sandro Perri. Hi guys, I'm Lori Brown. Let's Pondercast. This moment right now is so loaded. I see you looking expectantly at me, wondering what's about to happen. And you know, this could be your best moment of the night. So savor this moment. It also might be my best moment of the night, so I will savor it as well. Because I have a troubled past when it comes to performance. The first time that I set foot on stage, it was to receive a diploma for play school, you know how you would do it. And it was the same scenario. You had to walk across the stage by yourself and shake hands and get a diploma. And I got up to the stage in my new shoes and I started to walk on the stage and I totally wiped out. And I hear the audience go, "Oh!" And I get up, kind of dazed, and I set off again for that woman with that awful look on her face, and I wipe out again completely. And the audience, I hear them, they go, "Oh!" Like it's too much to bear. And I think I just sort of crawled across the stage and got the diploma and then ran into my parents' arms. And that was my first experience on stage. My second experience on stage, this could take all night, and it won't. Grade 1. And we were doing a play about a night in a library. And I won the role. I was to play the magazine rack. And I went home, and I remember telling my mother that she was going to have to make me a costume. And I see her quizzical face looking at me as her mind was reeling. How do you make a costume for a magazine rack? But also a kind of a disappointment that I could see in her face that my child is going to be the kind of child that gets the magazine rack role. No charisma, no chance to shine in playing the magazine rack. Cut ahead to singing in a band. I was one of 2 lead singers, and we'd played our first couple of gigs in downtown Toronto. And unbeknownst to me, there was a band meeting. And supposedly, they had all voted, although I was not there. But they voted that I was never to be allowed to speak between songs again. Never allowed to speak between songs again. So I stand before you, not a creation of my own experiences, but a creation in spite of my own experiences. Damn it, I learned to speak between songs. And that band is nowhere. So I've got issues up here, like I think I'm going to trip twice, and I can tell you it's that chord right over there. But you know your role so well. You are playing the role of the audience. You have done that so many times. You come expecting a managed experience, a night that has been designed for you. There'll be some kind of story, there'll be some kind of arc, something to get lost in, something to get found in. Well, I will be your server this evening. I have an experience pre-made for you. Well, it's probably half-baked for you, and it's your heat that is going to make this real. And we're all here in the flesh, eyeballing each other, but this is also going to be an audio-only experience, right? Because we're recording this for the next Pondercast. But for those listening to this podcast, let me describe what this looks like. We're on the second floor of the Fredericton Library, and behind me is a huge glass wall, and we're looking out over the St. John River, and there's a road that goes up and down along the river. Oh, and a big bridge that goes across, a little bit of traffic, lots of snow. And there are people about 4 or 5 rows deep all around me, and Joshua Van Tassel on stage, and Sandro Perri on stage, and magnificent white Christmas lights that transform any situation into something truly magical. And that's where we are. Now, normally when I record the Pondercast, I am standing in a closet, baffled by all these clothes, with the door shut, very little oxygen, and most likely in my pajamas. The mic is plugged into my iPad, and I'm reading notes from my phone, and I have to pause when the subway rumbles underneath or when an airplane goes overhead. Working in the world of sound is different from all the other visual forms of prepackaged distraction that you get offered that are just a click away, right? But in listening only, you still have your hands and your eyes to do whatever you want to do with. You talk, you wander away from the speakers, you zone in, you zone out of the music and the words. Sound fits around your life. You don't fit your life around the sound. But think about the things that you do in your evening when you use your eyes, like television or a movie, or playing a video game, or on the computer, whatever that means. What are you doing? I'm on the computer. Yes, but what? Are you buying jeans? Are you surfing porn? What are you doing? But think about the things that you consume visually that eat up your brain space and your time. You are called the consumer, but really, who's eating who? There's this book called The World Beyond Your Head, on becoming an individual in the age of distraction, and it's by Matthew B. Crawford. And he says that when we give our nights over to these things, TV, movies, video games, we are entering the zone of autistic pseudo-action. Honey, what are you doing? I'm in the zone of pseudo-autistic action. Okay, I get it. But a night in front of the TV or the computer screen just shuts out the real world, and we all know the bliss that that offers on the end of a really bad day. It's fantastic. Or if you're on the computer, the ability to exercise the tiniest bit of free will and click like on a post that reflects the way that you want to see the world work, it has such satisfaction to it. Man, that click felt good. But we are shut out of the real world in a million other ways. World banks run our money, and probably the country. Our jobs have us performing small tasks that rarely let us see the big picture of our efforts. Our food is mostly industrialized and frequently and more frequently pre-cooked for us. We can't fix our own household appliances. Someone else takes care of our children, our taxes, our investments. The mechanics of our life are manufactured for us, and even in our leisure hours, what we pay attention to is also designed for us. The click of the mouse that takes us to a suggested place based on our likes. You know, the extent of our own agency or free will in these hours and hours that we give our attention to the zone of autistic pseudo-action, you know, we're not getting a lot of action. You are bombarded with designed experiences 1,000 times a day, and once you start to notice them, it drives you nuts. I'm sorry. So if I ask it another way, what experiences do you have that aren't designed for you? Running into an ex-lover on the street with your new boyfriend. Having a car accident in the grocery store parking lot. Finding a litter of raccoons in your recycling bin. Those experiences, they jolt you, right? They really jolt you. You feel the ground shift under your feet. Whoa, wait, we're working without a net here. I wasn't expecting that. Your brain and your body come to full attention, and these unscripted events put you right into overdrive, mind scrambling, heart pumping. Or maybe what feels like overdrive is really just drive, because the rest of the time we have handed the controls over to someone or something else, and we're on autopilot. So one thing that we have plenty of experience at is being in an audience. And we're so good at playing the audience, we have so much experience that we've come to expect a certain level of gloss to these distractions, right? We want to know we're in good hands, that the grand designers of our entertainment will take us on an armchair adventure, but don't shake us up too much. We don't want to be drop-kicked into the deep end and left there to sort it out all there by ourselves, but to be taken on a ride just far enough to feel something and then bring us back home, safe and sound. Not a lot of gloss here tonight, not on the menu. We are a small group of people huddled together for warmth on the second floor of the Fredericton Library for an evening spent together, words, thoughts, safe and maybe unsafe, and music. And I want to introduce, well, you know Sandro Perri because you just heard him play, and I'm so pleased that you're here to sit in with us for Pondercast. I loved your music on the Signal. It was always the perfect time of night music.
Thanks, Laurie.
And Joshua Van Tassel, who is my musical partner for Pondercast, who creates the original music that you hear in Pondercast since we've been doing it since September. But we've never done it live like this, and this is a brand new experience, and it's my first time actually seeing what Joshua does. What is it that you're doing here tonight, Joshua?
Laurie and I talked a lot about how intensely nervous both of us were to do this. I spend a lot of time playing drums for people, so there's many big objects that I can hide behind. These are smaller things that I can hide behind, but I know that at this point, you have what's considered amongst Signal to be an iconic voice. I know presenting it live is a bit of a form of, it's anxiety. So there's a lot of the sounds that I'm using tonight that have sampled my own voice to make some of the ambient textures and sounds, just in solidarity to your anxiety as well. So yeah, most of the sounds you'll hear are vocal samples, or I spent a bit of time today in the library finding some books with interesting textures and bringing them into this keyboard. So I'll be running a combination of those things through these effects pedals, just keeping it Pondercast.
Okay. Let's pretend we are aliens, and we are dropping to Earth after the humans are gone. And we are a troupe of researcher aliens entering the library, which is still remarkably intact. Stardate 2318. Earth, in the old human place they called Fredericton. We study the disappeared people through their words, and what's this? We've sparked to a place where words still ring. They are touched together here. Ka-ching, alien academics jackpot. We are surrounded by words. This place is where they herded all words together. This was their wondering bank. Their wondering of what it was to be human. This was how they showed themselves to each other with these books. They had skilled practitioners to document and write down their experience, to bind the species together in their humanness. They had to use words when they spoke to each other. And so, right at beginning time, they named everything. It was a thing for these humans. If they didn't have a name for something, Christmas light, giraffe, rhododendron, it didn't really exist for them. Their animals were not like that. They didn't need to name anything, not through sound, not in their brain, just the humans. It was what set them apart, this naming thing. Putting a word to a thing started the process of trying to get a handle on what human existence was really about. Giving things they saw a name to, like lion, moved the lion from way out there in the forest and brought the lion right into their head. And that naming begat the labeling, the categorizing, the lists, the predictions, the concepts, the words, the words, the words. Naming became the way that humans began to think they owned what they named, a way that they placed themselves above everything else on their planet. And so it began. These humans were not born knowing how to read. It was a cultural invention that changed their brains, new neural pathways that changed perception, cognition, language, and over time it actually changed their emotions. The reading brain was the most important epigenetic breakthrough for the series, and their history could not have happened at all without the reading brain. But all these books they left, there's like over 130 million different books on Earth. Many of them told of stories that all led to one thing. And it was a thing that they couldn't name. It was something that was beyond their grasp. The word mystery appears over and over again. Attempts to solve the mystery of their purpose, their origin. Books filled with observations from these skilled scribes who wrote down what it was like for humans to touch the mystery, as if the purpose of all these books was to get humans to the point of unknowing. Why did so many books lead to a place where there were no more words? Humans did not perfect the leap to the unspoken way. They felt its edge, but jumped to tongues whenever they caught the quiet. They lost their ability to shape and move silence. That current was frozen with noise and words. This was an important scribe for the humans, Danielle Steele. She had many, many hands and eyes on her books. 800 million Danielle Steele books are on this earth, and she had 5 husbands. This book is called Winners, and it says, everyone reads Danielle Steele. This book will have people crying and cheering. Crying and cheering. These places of words where we are, libraries, and this was the one sharing space where silence was protected. Humans needed quiet to hear the reading in their heads. Those that came to the library try not to use tongues. Tongues were forbidden. But by far, the most forbidden sound in this space of printed words was this. That is disrespect for the printed word, and that could cost you hard current in a library. But in all the quiet, when books sounded, when they had human hands on them, this was the time that the books could sound in the library. I had said to Matt at Grid City that no books were going to be harmed in the making of this Pondercast, and I lied. But I bought that book. And I think I chose wisely. I went to Frenchie's in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, where I get a lot of secondhand books and a healthy lot of secondhand clothing. You have a Frenchie's in Sussex, New Brunswick. Does anyone know Frenchie's?
There's one in Toronto. Yeah.
Okay, who's wearing something from Frenchie's? Okay, for the listeners in the Faroe Islands or in Chile, you need to really know about Frenchie's, man. In fact, anywhere outside of Eastern Canada, you need to know about Frenchie's. So it was started in Nova Scotia, right, by this guy who was importing bales of clothing from the eastern seaboard states, and he was making rags for mechanics. It was called Acadian wipers. And he would cut up these clothing and sell it to rags. And then people started to cop to the fact that some of these clothes were really nice. And so then he just opened up these stores. So all over Nova Scotia, there are these Frenchies, and there's one here in New Brunswick, and it's where you go and dig through bins of women's sweaters and over here and men's t-shirts over there. But the first bin I always go to is the book bin. Why they also have books is beyond me, but I guess they get jammed in people's pockets in their clothing and then they donate them. I don't know. But at $3 for a hardcover or something, you just go in there and you buy on gut. And invariably, I will be reading a book I bought at Frenchie's while the washing machine is cleaning all the treasures that I bought there. And some line will jump out of this Frenchie's book, and it will be the exact thing I needed to hear at that exact moment in my life. It is a life lesson, a moment of searing clarity that shifts the direction of your head or your heart, and such is the power of the Frenchie's book bin. It's therapy for the masses. I can't tell you the troubled times I've been in, and I just go to Frenchie's and stand there and say, oh, please, God, make me pick the right book. So this time, I picked a book about 10 days ago. I was in Yarmouth, and I found a zillion Daniel Steele books, but I also found another book. It's by Henry Miller, and it's called Insomnia. And being someone who loves to think about night and what our head and hearts do to us in the middle of the night, this really appealed to me. And what is really exciting is when you open it up, it looks like this. It is a totally handwritten book. And at the end of the book, it is all filled with his drawings and paintings that he did when he could not sleep at night, and he was in excruciating agony for two reasons. One, he had a broken toe, and the other reason was that he was hopelessly in love with a woman, much, much, much younger than he was, and it was completely inappropriate that he should try to love this woman. Not that that ever stopped Henry Miller, but she was a singer in a piano bar. And he would go and listen to her sing every night. And he fell so deeply in love with this Japanese woman singing all these love songs. And he knew that every other lonely guy in that bar was sitting there falling in love with this beautiful young Japanese woman and thinking that she was just singing for them. And he knew that he shouldn't have anything to do with her, and this was stupid. He was way older than she was. But he just had this thing that he thought that he needed to marry her. And so he would write her these love letters at night. And she would not relent to him at all. And so these are the ravings of a man at 3 o'clock in the morning with a throbbing toe, drinking and raging against love and raging against everything. It's the anguish of unrequited love, of teetering on the edge, of all give and no receive. This may be the kind of love we experience most in our lives, actually. For how often is our love returned in the same way that we give it? Each one of us is so different in the way we love, and in the way we are also particular. Our dreams, our hopes, our sexual hang-ups, our sexual hangovers. How could any other human love us in the same way and in just the same amount as we do them? And yet the demand to be loved the exact same way that we love is what we keep striving for. How many marriages has that ended? You don't love me as much as I love you. Perhaps one of the greatest disappointments of love and the greatest lessons of love is that it doesn't quite work that way. Okay, maybe the early heady days of love, where love moves back and forth effortlessly, like you share a lung, like you share everything, a plate, a bed, the same clothes, like the 22-year-old son who comes home to tell his mother, "Mom, I found the female me." That momentary balance is the ideal we hold tight to. That's what we believe love should look like, all things equal. But actually that sweet, temporary blossoming comes and goes. And most of the time, love is spent in other seasons. Unrequited, giving one kind of love, receiving another. Sometimes it's the love we need, sometimes it isn't. And how much time do we spend in that Henry Miller kind of hellish unrequited love, just wishing we could lavish our love on this person if they only knew? Miller wrote, "The one thing we can never get enough of is love, and the one thing we never give enough of is love." So that's where he was when he wrote this book, in the worst part of unrequited love, trying to stop himself from gushing all over her. And yet he sat night after night listening to her on the piano, singing nothing of love. Those are the only words she spoke to him. And it was those lyrics, those words of, those warbled words that were in every piano bar, in every town, in every country. Those were the words he wished he might say out loud. That's what undid him at 3 a.m. Miller quotes Hermann Hesse. "Love must not entreat or demand. It's like asking someone to climb a ladder with their hands and feet tied. You have to go through agony before you can accept such sublime truth. The cynic will say it's meant for saints or angels, not mortal human beings, but the terrible truth is that it is precisely the impossible that is demanded of us ordinary human beings. It is we for whom temptation leads to salvation. Love must not entreat or demand." How do you do that? Is that an action? Is it a feeling? Is it a way of being? Do you need words to do it? Miller was convinced you had to go through hell to get to that sublime truth about love. Do you think that's true? So he wrote furiously through the night, and he painted and he agonized, and then at the end of the book, you find out, and it all came together, and I got the girl. Yay! This beautiful young Japanese woman marrying this friggin' old guy who's just been sitting in her bar every night that she's been trying to push away. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's so amazing. So I go to find out what the real story was. Yeah, she married him. She married him for about 10 years and divorced him a year before he died. It was a very sad relationship. She thought he was going to die a lot sooner. And she got tired of waiting. It was a marriage that was never consummated. They never slept in the same bed. He kissed her once. She thought it was gross. He was a terrible kisser. She said it was all wet. And they lived together for 10 years. Like, I mean, Henry, what were you thinking? These beautiful words had you thinking that he had it all together, man. He'd been through the fires of love, and he got it figured out. So it wasn't exactly the happy ending that he never got a happy ending on that. She said it would have been perfect if he'd been my grandfather. Like, that would have been just perfect, because we laughed together a lot, and that was great. But he was so determined that this was love that he ended up marrying her. But you know, that idea that all he heard from her in their courtship were all these love songs and these love lyrics. Like, how many times have you been undone by a love song? And isn't it always the song that has your particular flavor of yearning? Something you think you want, or that you had and lost, or surprisingly found? What kind of love song is it? Sandro.
You can turn your back on the show. You can turn your back on telling too. And you can turn your back on knowing. And then it's gone. You can turn your back on giving. You might turn on taking too. And you burn your back just living. You'll take it on. But who turns their back on love? And who turns their back on giving? And who turns their back on love? Who takes it on? Who takes that on? You can turn your back on asking, on anticipation too, and silently there asking, you'll say it all. So now turned away from wandering, you peek around the corner and nothing's true. Turning from simply wandering would bring it all smack down. To who turns their back on love? turns their back on asking? And who turns their back on love? And who takes it on? Who takes it on? And who brings it on?
When you are finishing a good book, when you look ahead and realize you only have 40 pages left, do you slow down and savor the last of the story? You turn the pages more slowly, you reread sentences to make them sink in deeper, and when you're done, do you take a breath, close the book, hold it in your hands, looking at the cover, front and back, reading the author's bio again, before stepping out of that world? At the end, the book for a moment or two becomes a tactile experience, and then you make it art. You add it to your bookshelf, another colorful slice of who you are becoming up on that wall. Compare that reverential experience of ending a great book now to a book experience in high school. Its last period, its chemistry class. And when the bell rang, you would hear chemistry textbooks slam shut all over the classroom, like, enough already, get me out of this book. But there was joy in that sound too, wasn't there? Like, we are out of here, this is done, I am off, it's quitting time. We are gonna make some book slamming music. It's an Oldsmobile tune-up and repair guide, but it has the sound of a good chemistry book. Deep listening, is that a thing? Without naming it, I think that we all do it from time to time. When distractions and noise fall away, whenever we can muster up our full attention to the sound. Like when you're lying in bed in the early moments of the day, hearing the first bird, deep listening. Late at night, you're in the country and you think you hear a coyote at the edge of your hearing out there in the black night, or when you think you hear a car turning into your driveway, finally, or standing at the sink washing the last pots and the music on the radio has grabbed you and you stopped washing and stop banging pots and you're standing there with your hands in the hot water and you're just listening. Those are the moments when you get the most out of sound. And why? It is because you were giving the most, equal amounts of attention flowing each way. The life of a musician, I think, is mostly that of unrequited love, because all the love and the attention is mostly going in one direction. But in the moments that you give yourself completely up to the music and match the amount of attention that the artist has brought to the music, the experience changes in such a meaningful way, doesn't it? That would be deep listening. Is there such a thing as deep reading? I would say poetry is deep reading, asking you to go slow and fill in a world in the spaces between that delicate track of words across a page. Here's an author that taught me about deep reading, and she's from New Brunswick, and her name is Beth Powning. And she wrote a book called Edge Seasons, and it's published by Knopf Canada, and it came out in 2005, and she has been nice enough to say, yeah, Laura, you can read from it. What? After we finished work, Jake has arrived home on the school bus, and we decide, all three of us, to ski up to the Blueberry Barrens before supper. We clip into our skis and sidestep up the enormous snowbank at the bottom of the driveway where the plow turns. I pull my neck warmer up over my mouth and nose, my eyes tearing with cold. I feel the exhilaration of weightlessness as my knees bend, my legs power, and then a long, swift glide. We slide down into the meadow, its snow unbroken by any tracks. A coyote howls. Jake hears it first, holds up a hand, and we pull to stand still. It's a long, rising note that quavers at its apogee and then holds, stretching the dusk like a tent pole, pulling the dark hills taut, and then it drops swiftly to a lower complaint, a progression from demand to query, and the cry quivers until no sound is left. Smoke rises from chimneys. Our neighbors who work in the town, at hardware stores, the ranger station, welding shops, are driving home. They're making supper, throwing hay to the cattle, turning on the TV news. The coyote's cadence scrolls the evening. Anyone walking from barn to house would hear it. Yet the call comes from another realm and is as remote, as far from our lives as are the black-winged ravens who patrol the skies, flying so low that we can hear the pant of their wings. We wait, but the coyote calls only once again and then falls silent. We push on, skiing fast across the meadows over Snow Bridge Brook, herringboning up the steep field, hoping to reach the top of the barrens in time to see the sunset. We've timed it right. The sun is almost set. It's sliding down behind the western hills, changing from its daytime benevolence to what it truly is, a place of flaming explosion and violence. I squint into the red light, my heart pounding from the long climb. There's one final moment when the sun quivers behind the black trees. Long shadows lie blue on the iridescent snow. We feel light on the curves of our cheeks. Spruce needles flash. Then the sun settles like sand in a timer and is gone. The air is instantly colder. Shadows are absorbed by darkness, and the snow mirrors the lingering red sky, but no longer sparkles. It is absolutely silent. We stand surrounded by dark hills for a long time. Even the dog sits very still, her ears pricked. The beauty of the barrens comes not from its ragged contours, but from the space left by what is lost. It's like midwinter itself, when absence grants preeminence to constellations, or the voice of wind, or columns of northern lights. I turn back to watch the day's life drain from the sky. I wait for a minute, listening to silence, as if, like the coyote's cold and quavering cry, it is itself a language I might one day understand. Its power flows over the poignant lost forests, the empty barrens. I look at the drifting clouds, now burnished coppery red, thinking that it is not this barren land that makes the true context of our valley. These hills are themselves cupped in the black violent universe. Emptiness is not always desolate, and birth starts in silence. I grasp at an understanding that touches the edge of this thought, but it fleets past and is gone. I push off and fly down the hill, planning supper, casting my mind over the contents of the pantry. There, she did it. She took us to that edge of language. She took us to that spot of unknowing. This place has seemingly nothing to do with the designed lives we live, the manufactured experiences, the supervised and sanctioned distractions we participate in. We cannot live in a world that is interpreted for us by others. An interpreted world is not a hope. Part of the terror is to take back our own listening, to use our own voice, to see our own light. Hildegard of Bingen. Here in this library, this epicenter of our interpreted world, a world that can lead us only to the edge of what might be beyond, in that moment that Beth Powning could almost grasp. What is beyond interpretation doesn't have a frame around it. It's too big. It can't be labeled or managed, controlled or mastered with words or without words. That mysterious place of no words is the lost and found place, where you lose yourself, and ironically, the only place you can find yourself. You can have someone else's thoughts and words lead you there, and you can feel it in your body, listening to a piece of music. But once you find your way there, you are on your own in the lost and found place. And when you find it, do you retreat with fear, not ready to work without a net, or do you go after it? Out in the beyond, scouring the heavens or plumbing the depths, we are all innocents, unsupervised and unmanageable. See you there. I'm Lori Brown. Thanks, Fredericton.